There we go. Good evening, everybody. So tonight's talk is all about bowel movements. And this is a topic that is actually fairly common in clinic because about 20% of all Americans suffer from some time to time from constipation. Actually, probably everybody from time to time. And they say that about a third of the preschoolers in this country also are suffering from constipation. A couple of reasons. Kids tend to avoid their whole foods like the broccoli and things like that. So, and as the adults go, so too do the children. So, for example, if you were to visit rural Africa, where in some parts of the country the diet is still the traditional diet, it is exclusively whole food, plant-based pattern, and there is no constipation. So a couple of things that can be contributed to or for constipation is the dairy products in this country. Cheese and cow's milk and such, especially in the cheese form, that actually has this caseomorphine, which is a milk-based morphine that basically slows down the passage of stool. And so for many children, very simply eliminating the dairy products and switching over to something else instead tends to be helpful. Of course, no talk on poop would be complete without plenty of examples of fiber. So we aim to have about somewhere between 25 to 40 grams of fiber in the diet per day, according to the recommended guidelines, because the more fiber, the less cancers, and all sorts of good things. But how do you know how much fiber that is? And so to start off, I've got a handy demonstration table, which just for examples will go over a few different things. So you can start the day off with one variety or another of oatmeal. So for example, in a half a cup of this dry oatmeal, which turns out to be about a cup full or a full bowl, in 1/2 cup dry, you get 5 grams of fiber. So that's 5 and a little bit of oatmeal. Let's see, what else do we have on the table? Check out these mangoes. These mangoes are very, very rich in fiber. And so even a little bit of something like a very fibrous fruit like this can be very helpful as well. Let's move that to the side there. Grabbed a bag of apples. So these apples a piece are about 5 grams of fiber. Pears are also similarly rich in fiber as well. In the pears you get about 6 grams of fiber per small pear, or medium size. Here is some just plain old generic shredded wheat, 100% whole grain. And in about a cup and a quarter cup, you're going to have 6 grams of fiber in the whole grain cereal here. So that's just plain old shredded wheat. That's about as pure wheat as you can get. Similarly, there's these little crisp bread kind of things. So one little crisp bread here has 2 grams of fiber. One fun thing you can do with a crisp bread is take some dates and some black beans and anything else in there. So basically that's a black bean date hummus mix, and that is also very, very rich. Oh, cacao, and of course cocoa, thank you. And that brings you to a very nice chocolate fudge flavored thing, and that goes very nicely on things such as the crisp bread. So a little dessert idea for you there. Anyway, now maybe I'll post. So I'll post the recipe for that a little bit later. Of course, that's made with beans, which are very rich in fiber. I've got a can of beans around here somewhere too. Here is some flax seeds. So one of my favorite foods for multiple reasons. And then here on the thing, so only 3 tablespoons. And so this is a tablespoon. Only 3 of those get you 8 grams of fiber. And just a little bit of this. So if you have a little of this ground up in your morning cereal or something else during the day, flax seeds are very effective as well. Beans, we get some dried beans here. Beans are extremely rich in the fibers. So any guesses as to this bag of black beans? A quarter cup dry, which again will expand when it's cooked, a quarter cup, 12 grams. So just a little bit of the beans, 12 grams of fiber. So you can see just by grabbing a few ordinary household supplies here, it's very easy to reach 35 or 40 grams of fiber if you're including whole plant foods on there. Some things are actually very rich in water, so sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to just have some lettuce or something, and they think that because they're getting a bulk of the leaves that they're getting a lot of fiber. But a lot of iceberg lettuce really doesn't have a lot of fiber in it. So you think here's a bag of mixed veggies, which of course are wonderful for you. You got your carrots and your broccoli and such. And in here, only 2 grams of dietary fiber per 3 ounces of serving. And in this whole bag, there's 4 servings. So you think, wow, there's a lot of stuff there. Where's all the fiber? And part of it is because it's kind of bulked up with the fluids, the water weight that's in there, which is not bad. Eat your veggies, they're very good for you. All right, what else we got here? Another fiber-rich food is these dates, which were used to make the black bean and date fudge mixture with basically black beans, dates, and cocoa. And you can also use pinto beans too for this, by the way. Recipe to be coming later. But anyway, so here's a couple of dates, and 2 dates, only 2 dates, has 3 grams of fiber. So a quick, very sweet snack, and you get a lot of fiber in there as well. What else do we have? So pinto beans, can of pintos used for the mixture earlier as promised, and in a half a cup of this, 5 grams of fiber. So there you guys go. Those are some examples of what approximately 5 to 12 grams of fiber looks like in a quick serving size container. So it's actually very, very easy to get a large amount of fiber if you're eating plant foods. Sometimes people will go ahead and buy the commercially available jars of various things. Basically, some of them are ground up seeds. So rather than having, actual seeds that you can eat and they're tasty and have some nutritional value, like say sunflower seeds, where is it at again? 1/4 cup of these sunflower seeds is 3 grams of fiber. So another thing you notice I'm demonstrating here is label reading. The more you read labels, the healthier people tend to be, and the more weight loss they tend to have as well. So they'll try taking this powdery stuff, and they'll mix it with some water, and they'll chug it down and say, I got myself 2 grams of fiber, and it tastes gross and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is that not only does it usually taste gross, but they also oftentimes add some sort of artificial sweetener to it, which also messes up your gut bacteria to some degree too. And you can actually get all the fiber you need from actually eating real food and getting all the other micronutrients along with it. So that's kind of my main message for tonight. The other main message is having enough fluids tends to be very helpful as well. One idea that I share often in the clinic is the body has several natural times a day in which it tends to have a bowel movement. So you eat some food, the stomach starts churning, and the intestines start to naturally move themselves along to make way for the next round of foods to go through. And we're very well adjusted to a very high fiber diet, because that way the intestines don't have to squeeze quite so hard. Bowel movements are large and soft. They absorb all sorts of biles and things like that on their way out. So in other words, it really is the garbage chute. When the body doesn't need the cholesterol and stuff, it just throws it in the garbage chute, it binds to the fiber and then you just boop it out. For example, in the cholesterol video, I talked about collard greens as being really good at binding up those bile acids and basically putting them down the drain, so to say. And similarly, extra estrogen, which if left alone sometimes can raise the cancer rate. So for best cancer prevention, there's some studies that show that generally speaking, the larger the bowel movement, the lower the cancer rates in general. Also lower rates of appendicitis and colon cancer, and of course diverticulitis, or little inflamed outpouchings of the thing. So, so water intake going along with this too is very, very helpful. So one of the most common reasons why the children are bound up is because they're not drinking enough fluids, and same for the adults. It's very easy to get dehydrated here. And so having about 9 cups of water, for example, per day, or other fluids, please avoid the high fructose corn syrup fluids, of course, but basically having the fluids go through the system is very helpful for preventing the constipation. So if you have only a high fiber diet but no fluids to soften up that fiber and keep it moving through the chute, so to say, then you'll get more side effects. So before launching into a very high fiber diet, it's usually advised to increase the amount of fiber gradually over time. Otherwise, sometimes the body gets bloated because basically those good bacteria are so starved for really good fiber that they just go, fiber, yay, and then bubble, 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 and it gets all gassy and bloated, and people start shaking their fist at the doctor's screen and be like, what happened to you? Yeah. So anyway, the idea that having the extra fluids goes hand in hand with the extra fiber does help to treat most mild cases of constipation. So the highest rates of constipation are amongst the very old, those over 60, 65, and those who are on the younger side are less than 10. So paying attention to those natural body cues right after meals, first thing in the morning, can actually make it more likely that you'll be able to use those natural cues to be able to go more naturally. It's very common that somebody starts to eat more fiber and then they come in a panic saying, oh my gosh, I eat and it goes right through me. It usually takes about roughly a day for food to go from top to bottom, so to say. And if you really want to test your bowel transit time, or how long does it take to get from one end to the other, you can do something very simple like eat some corn or something, and then basically that's only partially fully digested, and then it's very easy to tell how long does it take in your personal situation. So waking up first thing in the morning to either a caffeinated beverage, such as coffee or tea or something, for some people is a very helpful way to jumpstart the system. Sometimes I'll tell people about what I call a water bolus. So the idea is waking up in the morning and having a cup of fluid, let's say a lukewarm water, maybe a little lemon or something, throw in there for flavor if you like. And then over a little time, next day maybe a cup and a half, next day about 2 cups. And for some people it becomes comfortable, expand that up to 3 cups or 4 cups of fluid. I call it a bolus because when you've got a patient who's dehydrated and they need some IV fluids, sometimes we'll say basically get them a bolus of fluid, and that means like you take a whole liter and you just kind of turn on the tap and let it all go in all at once. So similarly, if you've got a little bit of a water bolus going in, you have 2 cups, somewhere between 2 and 4 cups, depending on your personal comfort level, of fluid going in first thing in the morning, and basically goes into the stomach, and it starts to stimulate that peristalsis, that movement of the stomach and the intestines, and kind of flushes things through. Of course, these are just a few ideas. Please talk to your personal physician about individual circumstances. The other things to keep an eye out for are sometimes it can be a result of medication side effects. Sometimes there's thyroid issues. Check out my thyroid talks for more about that. Sometimes it can be behavioral because sometimes, especially with the children, they're so afraid of going to the bathroom in public and such that they just don't, it's like gross and ewy, and so you don't want to like do these things in the public restrooms and things like that. So, so training the children to be able to have a bowel movement in the restrooms at school can be very helpful as well. Sometimes there can be a painful experience in that department, and the hard, the straining, the really difficult to push through because of the lack of bulking fibers and fluids and things can cause a tear and so forth. And so occasionally there can be a behavioral response where the sphincter tightens rather than relaxes to be able to allow the bowel movement. So occasionally behavioral therapy to help people to be able to relax and to loosen can be helpful as well. Women tend to be a little bit more constipated than the men, sometimes with regards to the natural hormone cycle. Sometimes at the end of pregnancy, you got all that extra weight pressing in that area, for example. Occasionally, people with spinal issues can have difficulties going as well. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of things. So in other words, if things are different than usual, it's new, it's a different change, lasts longer than 3 weeks, or more severe, or if you're starting to get blood, coming out in that direction, weight loss, fevers, weakness. Sometimes it can be one of those signs of colon cancer and such. Not to scare anybody, but as people are getting above age 50, and if certain stool changes are happening, then occasionally it's good to get checked out. So please, so just be mindful of your bodies and the habits and everything. So anyway, more on that. Check out my colon cancer prevention videos where talking about all this fiber and stuff is very helpful. So we talked about the different versions of laxatives in passing. Some people will take some citrus or prunes and that sort of thing, and those can be helpful. The prunes actually have an effect where they do stimulate the rectum pattern to move a little bit faster. The downside to some of these stimulants is that actually people can get addicted to them and overuse the stimulants. So instead of listening to their natural body cues, like first thing in the morning or right after meals or other times, they're trying to get the senna tea and the other kinds of things, and then the colon becomes numb to them, so they need more and more of these just to have a regular bowel movement. So anyway, like I said, there's a bunch of different kinds of things out there. Rather than belabor it too much on here, I'll post some of these things in the comment section afterwards. But hopefully some of these quick demonstration ideas of, how much fiber is in a little something like, here we go, 1/4 cup of walnuts, 2 grams of fiber. So having some healthy fruits and vegetables and extra fluids. There was one thing I did want to mention. Almost forgot about club soda. So there is also, for relief of occasional constipation, some studies on club soda. The extra fizz and the bubbles going in can be helpful with getting things moving on the way out. So anyway, so enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the references and everything in there. I'll have some little things about high fiber foods and things along those lines. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.